Right, hello, good evening and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live. We are joined by 4 superstars and we're going to be talking about heat pumps and hybrid systems mostly tonight. I will let them introduce themselves and then we will get on with the conversation. So Richard, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, hi, I'm Richard Midwell's from 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗻𝗄, key speaker, keynote speaker, legend, TikTok star now as well. You know, it's just going onwards, you know. But great to be on another session with Drayton, and hope you're all well. Next,
Rhiannon.
Hi, yeah, Rhiannon. I'm in North Devon. I work for a small family business, local installers, heat pumps and solar generally, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, my name's 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗵𝗁. I'm from the Heating Academy. I too am in North Devon at the moment. That's coincidence. I'm down here doing a bit of training for a renewables company. Yeah, I'm quite keen to get on with this. It's a very well spoken about topic. These hybrids and how we're going to best utilise them, how we're going to fit them into the system, so some sort of in-between thing. So yeah, looking forward to how the conversation goes tonight.
Yep. Hello. Yep. Hello. Yeah, I'm Graeme Heron. I'm I'd say the alleged heat pump specialist for a 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗹 or a specialist consultancy, because I've been in low carbon heat for about 14, 15 years. In the last 2 years, I've been learning loads about the industry, speaking to a lot more like-minded people. So yeah, so I'm interested. Obviously, the hybrid debate seems to be, can I use the word, getting fueled heavily at the moment. So yeah, be good discussion. And I'm in sunny South Shields in Northeast England, if you haven't heard of it.
So thanks everybody so much for spending the time and joining us tonight. Who wants to kick off and tell me what a hybrid system actually is? Richard?
Well,
don't jump.
Yeah, let's just kick it off, shall we? So a hybrid system is basically, it can be an amalgamation of anything. I mean, we think about hybrids as a heat pump and a gas boiler, but actually a hybrid can actually be anything. We could have a heat pump solar thermal hybrid, or we could have something else. Do you know what I mean? It can be a hybrid of many things, but in the traditional sort of, as we're talking tonight, it's more about being a gas boiler. So normally a combi boiler, normally because of space requirements, that we would have a combi boiler and then a small heat pump. So something maybe 4 or 5 kilowatt heat pump on the system, working together depending on the cheapest rate of energy to fuel the appliance at the time. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. So it's a bit of a stepping stone from people moving away from the boiler that they're really used to and into the new revolutionary world.
Yeah. Aren't all hybrids is kind of my thing. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, if you gauge them against the vehicle industry, so you know, lots of people have gone from a petrol or diesel fueled car over to a hybrid. So something that then uses a generator to actually put the stopping energy, so the energy that you brake with or you use your brakes with, puts that back into batteries and then uses that with an electric motor to then further power the car over having like a petrol or a diesel engine. And very much the same in our industry. We're trying to supplement our gas usage with electricity usage, but efficient electricity usage via a heat pump.
Okay, so how does it work? Do we go on to the how does it work next, or how do we get it set up, and what's the sort of scenario with setting it up? How does it determine what to use?
Can we go again? Yeah, okay. So in a nutshell, so if we talk about one system, it's only one system, but 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗵𝗁's hybrid system. Like Alfred, who's Alfred? 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗵𝗁's hybrid system. So the way that works, it has an energy manager. Okay, so you basically put your rates into the energy manager. So say it's like 40 pence per kilowatt hour for gas, and it's 10 pence. For electricity, and then 10 pence a kilowatt hour for gas. You'd put that into the energy manager, and then basically, depending on external temperatures, depending on the COP efficiency of the heat pump, things like that, would then decide on whether it brought on the gas to heat your system or whether it would bring on the heat pump to actually heat your system. And then so basically it can do heat pump only, gas and heat pump hybrid, or just gas only. So that's kind of where they've badged their equipment to. So that's generally what most do. So Worcester do very much the same. So Worcester have a hybrid. They do very much the same. They have again a central controller. You put your rates into it. You put the actual efficiency of the boiler you add onto the Worcester, because the Worcester system can actually work with other boilers as well. And so basically you put the efficiency of the boiler into it as well, because obviously that's quite key. Because no point saying, oh, it's 94% efficient. We all know boilers aren't 94% efficient. So you put maybe 87% efficiency for the gas boiler in, and then the energy manager would then work out, what can I actually do? Do I actually bring the gas in? Do I bring the electric in with the heat pump? And which is the cheapest option to fuel for the customer, basically? And that's generally the nutshell of it. But obviously you have considerations around that, like people with PV systems, but maybe not the space for a cylinder. Then maybe a hybrid would be a good way of doing that. But you would want the hybrid system or the heat pump side of the hybrid system to operate during your production hours with your photovoltaic, so you would try and manage that better.
So it's not specifically your heat pump runs your space heating and your boiler runs your water. It works it out itself.
No, so on the combi one, so basically the hybrids that use combis, they are still doing your hot water. So there's no option for the heat pump to do hot water in that scenario. It's still gas-fired hot water, but it is a small proportion of energy use versus your space heating, usually in most properties anyway. So that's kind of it. But you can get other hybrids. You can have hybrids doing cylinders and but in those scenarios, if you're putting a cylinder in there, you're probably better off putting a heat pump in. Do you know what I mean?
You've got the room, yeah.
So if you've got the space, go on, Rhiannon, go on.
No,
go on.
I just find it really interesting, because I was asking all our installers, and I'm quite new to the industry, but I was asking if we've ever fitted any. And our chief installer, who's been working for the company for over 10 years, has done one. And I wondered what the numbers are on them, because MCS don't have any numbers for hybrids.
I don't know, maybe
I don't know how popular they are.
Graeme, I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. No, that's the numbers, because MCS obviously MCS can't be, you can't certify a hybrid heat pump in MCS. I'm saying so. You actually can't. So and MCS is the sort of de facto sort of route that will go down. So with just to go slightly onto the policy side of it, with the government announcing the clean heat market mechanism, which is a scheme where fossil fuel manufacturers, so 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗃, Worcester, Vaillant, etc., if they sell over 20,000 boilers a year, they've got an obligation to sell a percentage of heat pumps. Now it's under consultation, but this is one of the challenges of that scheme, is that the DESNZ have said it'll be how the targets will be set will obviously dependent on sales of boilers, but how government will know that the manufacturers have sold X amount of systems will be based on the MCS certificate, which is a completely different debate, which we can, don't really need to go down on this discussion. But also the hybrid heat pumps are included within that market mechanism. So to go back to the original question, there's no sort of definitive numbers on hybrids. Obviously, once we start the market mechanism scheme, which is coming into place sort of 2024, that every installation be registered. MCS will change. There is changes with MCS afoot, and they're going to be consulted on in a few weeks' time. But you will have to, so we will know the numbers of hybrids, we'll know the numbers of heat pumps that have been installed, because the manufacturers will then have to make sure it's been installed, and rather than sales, it's going to be an installation. But on the market mechanism, how you accrue or how you hit your target is on credit. So every heat pump you get, every heat pump that's installed, that's one of yours, of your obligation, you get a credit. But what the government says in the consultation is a hybrid gets half a credit. Now we can argue all day, is it half a credit? Is that just to say, well, we'll just give them half? Manufacturers are saying, well, when we sell a heat pump, we don't know if it's going to be a hybrid or a standalone. So there's all sorts of things going in. So again, there's lots of industry consultation. We, as Jem said, we do a lot of work for the Heat Pump Association. So we're their policy leads, as well as other industry stakeholders, key industry stakeholders. So that's the sort of challenge we've got, you'll find most hybrids, I've worked for a smaller manufacturer in the past where we've done all the design and the calculation. The gas boiler only actually comes in for 3 or 4% of the time when it's really, really, really cold. So what some of our clients may be possibly suggesting is, okay, if we're going to have a hybrid, can we have a standard where you've got to have at least 80% of the space heating load or the overall heating load designed by the hybrid. If you can't meet that requirement, then you don't get any credits at all. But there's all sorts of stuff going on. But going back to the original questions, I'm sorry, there's no sort of definitive figures on hybrids. But I think we've got to be careful. But don't just dump a load of heat pumps in the market, say, yeah, that ticks the box as a hybrid. It's actually going to cost the customer more money to run because it's not been set up correctly. So there's lots of debate with the market mechanism proposed scheme. So and that's all I've thought about for the last few weeks, and my head hurts.
No, that's good to know. I find, with having very little experience in them, I guess I can see the pros and cons. But Richard, you're all for them.
A lot of cons at the moment I'm hearing, unfortunately. I don't want to be like that about hybrids, but there's lots of questions not being answered by the hybrid. Whether it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a Worcester, an Alpha, or the Intergas have got one coming up shortly, or Valiant, or whatever. There's not much data, so I've tried to dig into this a bit. There's not actually much data behind the efficiencies and the scenarios that the hybrids have been put in and how they've been run, and because it's okay bringing data over from abroad, because we can say, oh well, that's been in Italy or France or wherever for a set period of time, but actually I can't find masses amount of data on hybrids. Although if you logically think about it, if you did have a hybrid running at a COP3, so 300% efficiency or above, and we were paying 40p and for electricity, then potentially you're getting that then the same rate of gas, aren't you, price as if it was 10p. So but you're not actually then saving the customers any money, are you, really? So it depends what it's about. Is it actually about the carbon offset and the savings on that side, or is it actually trying to save customers money? Because obviously if it's the latter, and you've got installers going into properties and going, we can save you money, and they're going, well, show all the data and show me this before it all goes ahead and it all gets installed, then I think there's a lack of data behind it all, and that's unfortunate, because there's nothing more I want to go than go for a hybrid. If you haven't got the space or whatever, go for a hybrid. But the problem is, in my head, is that it's maybe £2,500–3,000 for a hybrid system. Some of the systems that are out there, and it's it's like Kimbo. Customers, they want their money back, don't they? Do you know what I mean? To a certain extent, it's not just about saving the planet. It's how's it going to benefit me? Is it going to, is it going? And I think from Rhiannon's perspective, if you've got solar PV and you've got that most of the summer, but the thing for me, if you've got that most of the summer and the combi boilers doing the hot water anyway, it's kind of a missed opportunity in that. You know what I mean? PV systems then kind of miss that, don't they? Do you know what I mean? I don't know, but now coming off mic a minute. I'm muting. Someone else going to have to take.
Jimbo, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah. So I think knowing how the salesmen work, and targets, and if we go back 10 years ago to new houses, they all had solar panels on, and then someone worked out that you could put a water harvesting bucket and 6 foot of plastic pipe and score the same points, and then suddenly there hasn't been a solar panel seen in a decade. And so all that's going to happen, really, I think, is that the one person that will get hammered is the customer, because they'll just find their ways around it. The poor old customer, the big companies, they're going to have targets to sell. When I first got involved in our sort of heat pump company, I obviously got involved with a couple of others to see how they did things. And the salesmen that came around, I think they dug out all the old double glazing salesmen from the 1990s. They've all come out of retirement, talking utter beep beep about how much money you're going to save, 80% of this and 70% of that. And I remember saying to this guy, have you got any figures? oh no, well, this is 3 times that and that's 4 times that, and you're going to use the same amount of energy, but it only costs you a quarter as much, so you're going to save 75%. And the poor old customer is the one that gets lied to. And we really do have to protect the customer against sharp practice. And, big companies, they don't care. They just want targets. It's all bottom line. CEO needs a new super yacht. They're just going to want to sell stuff. And the problem is we as in sort of the installer front are all going to get drawn into that because we got mortgages to pay. And there'll be all sorts of free beanie out offers if you fit a heat pump instead of fitting a boiler because, it's like we've got a target to meet. And I think it's really unfair that the customer is so far down the pecking order. I don't think any of this is to do with saving the planet. It's all about just making money. I don't see lots of the things that we do really favour the customer. You do get good installs, no question about that, and you do get happy customers. But I think overall, we as an industry aren't looking after the planet or looking after the customers. And it's the poor old customers, cops it all when it all goes wrong. Nobody cares. It's all right, MCS saying, we've got this department where if you've got a problem, I mean, there must be one bloke working in that department with a queue of 10,000 people, all wanting to know why their lecky bills are £2,000 a month. So, and that's not me trying to be negative. I am being negative. I'm not trying to be negative. I'd love to be positive, but it's the real common sense to hybrid stuff. If you've got a boiler that's only a few years old, why are we scrapping that? Why is that going on the scrap heap? We're not looking. I don't think we look at the overall picture. We're going to take out a cylinder that could probably be reused. We're going to take out a boiler that's got another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years life in it, and that's going to get scrapped just so we can put something else in that, like you say, isn't going to save anybody any money. If you're looking at it from an investment point of view, it isn't, because it's not going to save you any money over a 10-year period, especially with the price of stuff at the moment. And is it really helping us save the planet? Well, I don't know what the carbon's involved in. I think, didn't we do 1.4 million boilers last year? Can you imagine a pile in a landfill site of 1.4 million boilers? Yeah, how big would that landfill site have to be? And we're doing that every year. That was a low year, apparently, 1.4. I gather it was 1.7 on a peak year, more than the rest of Europe put together. And we don't seem to factor that in as well. All that stuff's got to be I don't know what they do to it, recycled, time, effort and money in doing a carbon footprint. I'm a big fan of the industry. I'm a big fan of it, but I just don't think we've got our ducks quite lined up yet. The ducks are all aimed for making big companies money, not for saving the planet. That's how I sort of see it. And sorry, no, crack on.
No, I was going to say, I definitely worry that it's too transitional, because that's what we always hear about the hybrid system. It's transition, it's going to help and blah, blah, blah. But actually, we've already got heat pumps, which are, the end aim. So why are we compromising? I know there are advantages, the cylinder, I know, and I worry like house builders, like you said, they ended up not putting PV on. Well, they're going to end up putting in a load of hybrids, and then 10 years or 5 years, that's all going to changed again. And I do.
And it's also going to put the customer off, isn't it? If it's not efficient, like you're saying, and it's not an efficient way to run it, and it's not been done properly, then they're going to completely just go, well, I'm not having a heat pump because I've already had half a heat pump and it didn't work properly, or it's not efficient, it's not saved me any money.
I think I've got to be careful what I say, because we represent some large clients. But what I will say with anything that you do, it's got to be relying on accurate data and whatever propositions in. And I think when I last came on the webinar a couple of months back, I talked about the electrification of heat project, where there was 3 energy suppliers: 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗿, E.ON, and I think Warmworks, who aren't energy supply, but in Scotland, so it was about 750 heat pumps, a big trial, and the first release of information was every house is suitable for a heat pump. Now, we all know that, because in my previous job, I surveyed a castle for a heat pump, which will work, but it was only required, March to September, when the visitors are there, we only need background 16-degree temperature. But there has been some data come out of that, and I worked on the sort of a technical lead with over on the southeast, but a lot of hybrids were installed just up the road from me in Newcastle. And again, there was no sort of real sort of, this is how the project should be done. Not that you would do now. So they weren't mandating 55-degree floor temperature. It was just a trial period. So there's a lot of data that's come out, and some of the data that they put in, it was the hybrid systems that kept the combi boiler in, so that done all the hot water. the heating, I think that ultimately the figure that came out from the space heating was done by 39% of the heat pump, done 39% of the heating load. So again, we're going to look into that. Well, obviously none of the radiators were upsized, and I think I'm just looking at the report now. It was optimized for whatever was the cheapest for the customer at the time. So it really was, which is fine. We've got to learn these things. But my personal opinion is, with this project, they should have just really went and said, we're going to do it right first time. We're going to do it how it needs to be done, because we know we've needed low flow temperatures for years. Leading up to this, other countries have been doing it for years. I listen to Nathan's podcast all the time, and he goes on about Scandinavia and Sweden. It's great, and that's what they've been doing. So that's one of the things I think we missed a trick with that. But I think manufacturers are getting better with data. But a lot of the manufacturers in the industry appreciate some of them might sell hybrid heat pumps, and I can only talk about the manufacturers and the installers and the people that we represent or work together alongside with the Heat Pump Association. They're happy. They want a heat pump fitted. They just want the most efficient system for the customer, because whatever there's a problem, it goes to the manufacturer. Now, there's maybe some of the manufacturers that that import stuff in, that have got a funny name on the badge, that might not care about that. But generally, it is, your name's on the badge. We're not just selling a microwave, because if the microwave doesn't work, blooming got sold as a dodgy microwave, you just go and buy another one. Obviously, heating systems are a lot more involved in that. So I think data, my personal opinion is, data is key. We need to get this data. We need to analyze it and we'll look at it. But there's obviously other legislation coming in place, like, mandating low flow temperatures for replacement heating systems. And I think if you take a boiler out and put a gas boiler in, you should be mandated to update all the radiators as well, because that means become heat pump ready further down the line. And just one sort of last point, I've got the chair, I'm on the soapbox. When we talk about hybrids, obviously a lot of boilers are distress purchases. I think about 70-80% of boilers are changed into distress purchase. Now, if that boiler breaks down, with no space heating, the heat pump will probably do a majority of the space heating. Can we not put a heat pump in that will cover the space heating? And rather than go an expensive combi boiler, can we go for a water heater, like a multi-point mains water heater? And to get that this is just my personal opinions, and to get that customer over the line for when they need to do a 2 or 3 day install to upgrade the radiators, can the government subsidise the energy bills for that time? Because you will find, when I've done calculations for houses, most of the properties, probably 7 or 8 of the radiators are suitable for that room. And we've all turned the floor temperature down to 55 degrees, and we're all still warm. So this is just some of my personal opinions of how hybrids can sort of integrate in. But it is the distress purchase which needs to be sort of looked at, because that's when most boilers are changed, and moving forward. So there could be something like that. That's just my opinion. And I'm not going to, what's the word? I'm not going to put my stamp on it. Anyone can have it. Anyone can take that idea of us. I'm not bothered.
No rubber stamps today.
No,
I mean, the things that concern me, because obviously, I don't think they're a bad idea. I think they do have a place in certain applications, but manufacturers are selling them more. I've seen some videos from manufacturers about hybrids recently, and they're saying, well, you can keep your existing radiators, you can run them high temp, and I'm thinking, whoa, hang on a minute, why aren't you going in, changing the high temp rads to low temp rads, running the boiler at a lower flow temperature, and then the heat pump might actually be in more. Do you know what I mean? So it's a hybrid, but if you've got lower flow temperatures to achieve, the hybrid system is probably going to actually bias the heat pump a bit more. If we're running higher temperature system, it's going to be gas boilers in most of the time. Do you know what I mean? So I'm a bit concerned about some of the marketing and some of the way the manufacturers are marketing hybrid heat pumps, because it's kind of like, well, you can keep your existing system, you've got the benefits of a heat pump, and you can run higher temperatures, and that's totally me out. If someone's going to market it that way, I'm out. You know what I mean? We're heat pumps. If we're marketing them that way, we're heat pumps. Do you know what I mean?
It's too much of a juxtaposition to what we're trying to do. The whole point of, even if you keep your boiler and have low flow temperatures, like that is what we're banging on about. And then all of a sudden, even the high flow temperature heat pumps that are sort of coming out and stuff like that, we want to keep everything low and long, and it's really frustrating. And I think it's a bit dangerous. And I worry it's a bit like the hydrogen. If we go off it at that angle, we are not going to get to where we want to get to.
Yeah. It's just, you know what I mean? You can't mix the message, can you now? Do you know what I mean? We've got a narrative, we've got a platform, we've got a narrative. So if you're going to market a hybrid heat pump, market it in that same narrative, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And what was worrying me actually with a bus grant potentially going over onto hybrids, which do I think it should possibly? Do I think there should be real stipulations about if you're given a bus grant on a hybrid heat pump that the actual system's upgraded to 55 degrees as well? Definitely. Do you know what I mean? There should be definitely that narrative, and that should be focused on that, because, you know, we don't want hybrids going in on, oh, you don't have to change your rads, save your money, don't change your rads. We'll run the boiler at 80 degrees. Do you know what I mean? When it needs to, and we'll run it, you know, when we've got the weather outside that we can run the heat pump at 45, we'll run it at 45, you know, and that's definitely not what we want. We could be having a gas boiler running at 55 and we can have a heat pump running at 30. Do you know what I mean? And that's even better, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I just think, well, let's get our ducks in a line again, and let's have a proper think about this before we start chucking hybrids out into the world. Let's get all the data and let's make a really well-informed decision. And if it works, great. As a manufacturer, you've got nothing to worry about, have you? If it works and you can prove your data, and it, you know what I mean, you can genuinely say that without any bullshit, because that's not where we want to be. Ultimately, we need the correct data. We need, you know, installers need to be able to present that to their customers and be factual about it. Otherwise, let's have a PPI claim over everything, you know, because that's where we're heading. Yeah. That's where we're heading. And that's the truth. That's where we're heading with heat pumps. That's where we're going to head with hybrid systems. And eventually it'll probably cotton onto gas boilers as well. You know, so we all need to be really careful where we're all going with this, because I don't like the way it's being marketed. I have bit my lip in a few places actually on LinkedIn. I'm starting to not bite my lip as much anymore. Do you know what I mean? I'm getting, you know, a few people on LinkedIn think, oh, you know, has Rich lost the plot a bit recently, or, you know, something triggered him. But, you know, I'm starting not to bite my lip anymore, because we've all got to live in this world. If we're going to make informed decisions, let's have the data. Let's actually, if we've got a narrative of 55-degree flow temps, let's stick to that. Let's not start trying to manipulate that. Do you know what I mean? Because that's definitely not the way forwards. And yeah, I just, you know, let's talk about other hybrids. You know, I got a heat pump solar thermal hybrid here, which is brilliant, because my heat pump doesn't run for most of the year. Yeah. So when every day it's sunny outside and we still need, say it's 10 degrees outside, the solar thermal's topping it up. So, you know, it's not just about gas and electric hybrids. There's so much more we can do. And unfortunately, things like this aren't incentivized. You know what I mean? And I worked out the COP on my solar thermal the other day, and it was like 750 COP, I think it was, because my solar thermal pump uses 3-4 watts. Yet it generates 3 kilowatts. Do you know what I mean? So the COP of that is off the chart. You know, and we don't talk about that. We talk about a really poor COP of 3 or 4 on a heat pump, where solar thermal is producing COPs of 750. Do you know what I mean? And
I love solar thermal. I think solar thermal is probably the best technology. I used to teach at a college, and we had these solar thermal rigs, and we got them delivered in November, and we had them outside, and within about an hour, even in northeast England, we had, like, you know, 30-35 degrees worth of water. It was fantastic. But sorry to flick back to you mentioned data there, Richard, which is right. And that electrification of heat sort of project, one line I'm reading out now, because they did put ground source, they put high temperature, they put low temperature in, they put various archetypes, old properties, newer properties. But the report, which is one thing I find it's quite exciting in a way. It says high temperature air source heat pumps did not perform worse than low temperature air source heat pumps. So what's that saying is the radiators, the systems are nigh on there. You know, the SPFs weren't great. I think the average SPF was about 2.8, 2.9. But what's saying is that the government have done a trial with high temperature heat pumps, and actually said, well, we could just went for low temperature because the performance has been exactly the same. So we know UK properties can go to a low temperature system or a mid temperature system. So that's
we've said that a lot, haven't we, about the systems out there, that guys don't necessarily need to change the radiators because they're probably oversized in the first place, and then therefore they're actually okay for these new sort of systems. Lower temperature.
It was the insulation upgrades and things like that, double glazed. So when the radiators were sized in the 70s or 80s or whenever they were put in, and they were sized for that, they were sized for high temp then. But then you've had your double glazing, you've had your cavity wall insulation, you've had your loft insulation, you've had your Do you know what I mean? There's been so many upgrades and air tightness. Things are airtight. More airtight than they were back then. And this is the result. You don't need to change your radiators in a lot of properties. There's lots of guys actually. I mean, like Simon, Urban Plumbers. He did one heat pump job when he did the calcs in the property. Actually, he didn't need to change any of the rads. They were all sufficiently sized for 55 degrees, I think it was. So it's just goes to show if you are, and that's the important thing as well. We've got to do the calcs behind it, but I have got a lot of questions around gas and electric hybrids, because I'm being told a lot of things, but I'm not stupid. Do you know what I mean? And, 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁's not stupid. Rhiannon's not stupid. Graham's not stupid. Do you know what I mean? If you're being Billy bullshitted to, and sailing on the fluffy bits, it's the carbon saving. Well, okay, how much carbon intensity was in the production of that hybrid?
Because we as part of GemServe, we do a lot of work with clients on circular economy, which is way beyond my ability, but we're talking about lifespans of things. So we're talking about lifespans of heat pumps and boilers, and even now we're talking about in the eco scheme, which is traditionally given away free boilers, is now moving to heat pumps, and there's about 2,700 being installed, but it's mainly off gas because we've obviously got the RD/SAP issue where if you put a heat pump in, the APC goes down and on gas, which is mental. But things like heat pumps, how can we are now under Ofgem, they're looking at replacing broken down heat pumps under eco, which is great, but then you've got to deal with that heat pump. You guys know better than me, because it's metal and all that. Yes, you probably can recycle it, but what can you do with the refrigerant? Now, I'm not a refrigerant expert at all, but I've been told refrigerants can be recycled quite easily and used for the other technologies. But it is the whole circular economy thing of, and companies are going to sort of pay a sort of bit of a premium or a tax if they produce something that can't be recycled. So I'm going off slightly with fridges and washing machines, and the government's really pushing sort of a repair attitude rather than a replace, because you can go to AO.com and get a washing machine for £10 a month. Oh, that one's broken, I'll just buy another one, £10 a month for 5 years. I'm not going to miss £10 a month. So it is important across the piece, and obviously heating manufacturers have got to jump on that bus as well. To make sure whatever product they're supplying and the packaging around that product and how it's delivered and where it's shipped from, all that's going to be taken into consideration. So it'd be interesting to see if that helps with UK manufacturing, because I know a lot of manufacturers are building heat pump plants across Europe, Poland, Czech Republic, and it's likely related to more of the cheap labour, but can they get their product across and more efficiently and whatever? But we'll see what that comes about. But it is a massive sort of journey of what we're on with all these, with not just heat pumps, with anything you buy and sell. So it's going to be interesting times moving forward. But I'm not an expert on that. So if you want any questions, one of my colleagues, she's brilliant, she'll answer any questions. Even though I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Thinking about that.
You were going to say something.
I was going to say, doesn't that go against the ethos of everything that we do in the industry at the moment? No one's interested in repairing. We come back to the 1.6 million boilers. How are we going to get the big boiler companies to get away from that business model to somehow making a business model where they're not going to sell 100,000 of this model boiler a year, and they're only going to sell maybe 25,000 because now we're going to try and look after them. We're going to try and, repair them rather than replace them, which is fantastic. I think anyone with an ounce of common sense would think that's crazy. You look at some of the boilers that are taken out, look on the forums and that, there are boilers like 4 or 5 years old being taken out. A, because there's more money in fitting a boiler than fitting the parts, but B, because maybe the parts are so expensive. And I'm sure that's all part of the business plan as well, to force people into new boilers. But how are these companies that are selling 100,000, 200,000 boilers a year going to survive if they're only selling a tiny amount of heat pumps? There's no way they're going to sell 200,000 heat pumps in a year. I know that's not our problem, but actually that will be our problem. That will filter down to us, and that will filter down to the customer again. I don't think you can have both.
Well, I think they're going to have to change the whole sort of business model, 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁, to be honest, because heat pumps last longer than boilers, don't they?
Yeah.
We've got a lifespan 15, 20 years, so we'll have to move with the times on that, and all these manufacturers will no doubt have to do the same. But I appreciate we've got this attitude, and In the UK, we'll just go and replace it, get a boiler, replace it, stick another one. You know, I used to work I used to be the service and repair engineer for British Gas, and we used to look at cost effectiveness. This is years and years ago, so I don't know what the current business practices are like, but it would be, oh well, we may as well replace it, because if you've got a service contract with us, it might be costing us a fortune to come back and forward and repair. But obviously, it's how it's being installed. But I think the model, it's going to be a completely new dynamic of how we do this. And I think people's attitudes are, just because something looks a bit grubby and not right, they can't just change it. It's got to be repaired. So, you know, if my other half wants a silver fridge instead of a white one, it's tough. It's going to get repaired. We'll have to paint it.
And of course, and the other thing that none of the business models factor on again is training the guys that are going to fit all this new technology. The poor old installer, he's had everything dumped on him. You know, I mean, everyone's sort of assumed that just because the heat pump or the biomass boiler or whatever it is eventually comes out of a radiator, oh, well, yeah, the plumbers can do that. There's a radiator involved somewhere, you know, but there's so much new technology about, and we had an opportunity, you know, like you say, to draw a line and look at things differently. We had an opportunity to say, right, we know that this ACS training, you know, this guaranteed pass, tick box and multi-choice nonsense that we've all been doing for a decade now doesn't work. We know that. And so you would have thought someone is somebody up there, you know, the people that control us all would have said, right, we need proper training. We need proper, I don't know, apprenticeships, whatever you want to call it. I'm doing training at the moment. I've got 3 or 4 guys that have done the 3-day let's go and be qualified to be a heat pump installer course, and they come back and say absolutely clueless. We're all signed off, talked about sex and football for most of the time, guaranteed pass, and I've got no idea. So can you give us a clue what to do? So how do we factor that in with it all as well? Everybody's pulling in different directions, and the big ACS centres they're sort of setting up now as renewable training centres with the same ethos. You know, come and do 20 multi-choice questions, and we'll tell you what the answers are, and then we'll sign you off, and just make sure you give us £500 or whatever it is. It's bloody horrendous. And I don't know where that's going to go.
I've just done my ACS 2 weeks ago.
I bet you passed.
Well, I used to assess MC. I used to assess access in the college, and it's been about years and years since. To be honest, it was hard, but I know where you come from. But I think on the training side of it, I know I can only speak for policy and government, and I know there's massive upskilling required in the industry. There's you say you teach a design course, and the design and install is 2 separate sort of vocations, really.
Yeah.
But I know and I think I touched on the last time when I came here about mandatory technical competency. So moving forward, there's been a bit of a delay. Unfortunately, with the Grenfell disaster, the government looked at all these sort of trades and industries, said, what's going on here? How do we allow this to happen? So whether it's electrical, insulation, plumbing, heating, renewables, from hopefully mid next year, it'll be a mandatory technical competence. Now they're busy thrashing out what makes up their mandatory technical competencies. And some of the work we've been doing, some of the clients, we get visibility of that. But a lot of the stuff is ensuring everything I've responded on behalf of clients to government on the mandatory technical competencies. You must include low flow temperature design. Every single bit. That's absolutely critical. So that'll be part of apprenticeships moving forward, plumbing and heating apprenticeships. That'll be part of the shorter courses. So you will have to have a low flow temperature qualification before you move on to your heat pump qualification as part of ACS. The government mentioned in a boiler, it's sort of the Boiler Plus 2 consultation, which improving boiler standards. They mentioned, should it be a prerequisite before you do your ACS? You've got a low flow temperature design qualification, which is fantastic. I know ACS is more about gas safety, but we've all got to work together on this. And I know Gas Safe do sort of checks with energy efficiency as the right program room stat in. So that's all been talked about. So there's stuff there, but you're right, it does come down to the content of the course. Is it being delivered correctly? And ultimately, does the person understand it? Because I haven't been on your course yet, Kimbo, but I've been on Rob's course, the heat engineer, which is great. And even I've learned things. I'm thinking, I used to teach central heating design, 12 years ago to apprentices, and this has blown my mind away. But it's not for everyone, So it is critical that that is done correct. So the government are going that way. Whether they do it correctly or do it the right way, we'll find out in a year's time, and we'll probably find out in 4 or 5 years' time if all these heat pumps are being installed correctly, because we've got that 600,000 target by 2028.
Yeah. I think it's encouraging though that that's being talked about. You know, Graeme, like you said, like, you know, that has got to be a step forward, and you know, hopefully it'll start to filter down then, and you know, we're going to get more and more installers, and hopefully they'll all go on Kimbo's course, which I have done, and it's really, really good, to be fair.
There you go.
Yeah. But I just, I know you can't run before you walk, you can walk. And I think we're all quite we chase in a little bit, want to get, you know, it's all quite buzzy, we want to do as much as we can and all that kind of stuff. But, and when you're in this bubble, you forget about the people that are outside of it, I suppose, and sort of, you know, pulling people up and you know, making them stand up and sort of take responsibility for their chosen industry, and you know, how they can do it to the best of their ability for the clients and for the climate. You know, it's a huge job.
Yeah. I think everyone forgets it's about the customer at the end of the day. I think half it goes out the window, and I don't know why that happens, because ultimately when I was in business and I served customers, I always tried to serve them to the best of my ability, you know, and if that meant spending my own time, my own money, researching things or whatever, that's what I do. You know, I wasn't forced into it. It was something I wanted to do for my customers, you know, at the time, and something I've pulled into my business now. You know, I mean, when we supply bits and pieces for customers, we always try to bring the best things forward. We always try to get them there on time. We're still looking after our customers in a different way, but ultimately that's what it's all about. And, you know, just going back to the hybrid thing, you know, the decision's got to be, is it best for your customer? Ultimately, you know, with the information you're given in that chosen scenario, is it the best for your customer? And if it's not, do something else. Yeah. If it's not in their best interest, try and do something else. But I always say, try and just push it as far as you can get it. So if you're considering a heat pump and you think that customer's got, you know, and you're thinking, oh, you know what, maybe they haven't got the budget. Well, ask them, just say, you know, have you got the budget to go all the way? Do you know what I mean? Have you got that budget? Because if you have got the budget, let's do it. You know, if you haven't got the budget, let's talk about it and where we can sort of be, you know, rather than installers assuming, because, you know, I think we're not salesmen. You know, I like to think I'm quite a good salesman, but, you know, ultimately a lot of installers aren't salesmen, you know. So when you go into someone's house and you're trying to ask the right questions, don't just do what you have to do every day because you think that's how you've got to make yourself money. Ask the questions of the homeowner. What are their aspirations for the future? Do they want to come off gas, or do they want to, you know, do they want to put solar PV in the future? Do they want to battery storage? Or because it's all stuff that all make the difference to a hybrid system or a heat pump system. Because if they're putting solar in, battery storage, all the other bits and pieces, and they've got a gas boiler, but they're not ready to take that step, then a hybrid might be the way forwards for them, as long as it's then set up correctly to maximize the amount of, you know, solar generation they've got, or whatever, you know. But it's always that thing. I always think, you know, we should have more expectation of ourselves, you know, in who we are and what we promote and the people we associate with. And you might be, like I said, we are in a bubble. We're very lucky because we all know each other in the sort of circles we work in, because we're all striving for the same thing. But people want to be part of that as well, you know, and that's what a few of the Facebook forums that we've set up and things like that do. You know, it just gives those guys who are a little bit nervous just to jump on, sit in the background, watch and learn, and then they jump on Kimbo's course when they're ready, or they'll reach out to us, or they'll ask the other installers that are doing it, you know, how are you doing that? You know, how do you integrate these systems? How do you know what I mean? And it's all really great questions. And you know, I've really enjoyed the last 12 months because it's been like our group that me and Kimbo run. You know, it's gone from about 500 members to 2,000 members now, isn't it, Kimbo? You know, and most of those people have been on Kimbo's course. So, you know, it goes to show it's we started it, funny, isn't it, actually? We started a chat on there last night, didn't we, for this run up to, and everyone that's gone on the chat's gone, amazing course, can't fault it, you know, and it is, it just goes to show all the comments of the guys going down. No one's got a bad word to say about the course, all the material they're learning, because they're learning about rubbish install boilers that they choose. You know, I'm not naming names tonight, but you can look back through other videos and see what we're talking about. But, you know, they're going from those boilers then to actually thinking about adapting the systems to run low flow temperatures or mixed circuits. So running lower temperature, you know, mixed circuits where they can in the property, whether that be underfloor heating or lower temp rads. And it's great because we're starting to talk about advanced controls, you know, advanced controller systems, lowering the flow temperatures, getting the boilers optimized, and they're getting in the mindset of what, you know, what can I do more? You know, I'm doing this, what more can I do? You know, and that's where when Kimbo changed his course to like the hybrid, you know, to the heat pump. So we sort of hybrided it with hydronics. So it's not just a hydronics course anymore. It goes into heat pumps as well. I mean, that was a great step because what it's showing the guys that were nervous, they're not only going now to learn a bit of hydronics, but they're going there to actually learn a bit about heat pumps and how we should be designing our systems to get the best out of heat pumps as well. And, you know, without all this and without everyone's input and without, you know, I am passionate about it. So you're never going to beat that out of me, no matter what platform you're on, what social media you're on, LinkedIn, whatever. You'll never beat it out of me. But what I will do is I'll question everything that I see from now on, you know, and I will, you know, I'm not nervous to anymore. You know, we've got a target to meet. We've got 600,000 heat pumps, believe it or not, to actually get fitted, you know. Yeah, and that's a massive task. If we all just carry on what we're doing, we're never going to achieve that, you know. But there's also the other thing to be mindful about as well is getting the installs correct, yeah, because there's also a lot of hybrid systems I'm seeing being fitted, not being fitted very well out in the outside department. So not insulating the pipes correctly, not making sure the insulation that's used externally is of a type that won't absorb water over time, you know, like some of the Class O stuff, it will just absorb water, and then you get heat transfer from the pipework that you're generating with your renewable heat. So you just got to be very, very careful if you are fitting these systems, and including heat pumps. If you're doing heat pumps, pipe runs should be as short as they can possibly be, should be well insulated correctly. All the pipework should be insulated, not only insulated but sealed as well. So where you're making your connections, so you're doing elbows or whatever, they should all be sealed. You don't want any water ingress in any of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? You don't want brass on show, because how many installs we're seeing at the moment out there with heat pumps? Shitloads of brass on view. You know, you don't want brass sticking out, you know, massive chunk of brass like that in between your insulation. You don't want that. That's really not. We're going to be in trouble with some of the performance of some of these heat pumps if we're going to do that. And you know, because it's okay in midsummer when you're chucking it in it and it all looks great and you know everything's working. Let's get to -10 and let's see how much heat absorption the atmosphere takes out of your brass sections that you forgot to insulate and things like that. We just really got to get on top of all that. We've got to bring that up.
Clear. There's the appetite, isn't there? Loads of people doing Kimbo's training and everybody on your forums and all the guys out there. There is the appetite for these guys to do it better. Yeah. You know, the initial training that they've gone through is not adequate. We know that, and that's, you know, been talked about a lot. And they all want to be better. They want to do it better. So they're learning, and the more we can get on board with that, the better.
Some of the scary things, though, is the low temperature heat pump course. We've had a couple of really good heat pump installers attend it, you know, because you have to, even though they're really good at what they do, they've still got to attend it to be qualified. Yeah. So, and you know, these guys, there's a few guys out there just reading off PowerPoints when the technical guys that are going on the heat pump on these low, you know, whatever. I haven't been on one. I don't really want to go on one. When they're going on it and they're asking technical questions, the assessors or the trainers just don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. And that's wrong. You know, if you're asking these guys to go on these courses to do this stuff, the guys that are delivering the courses should really know what they're talking about, and not showing them material that goes against actually what they know to be efficient, you know, and that kind of worries me a little bit. That needs a little bit of tweaking, in my opinion. But
I was that guy in 2010 delivering the 𝗵𝗲 heat pump course because I just didn't. And I was a lot younger then. I came off and went in the install because I wanted to learn a bit more. But I do get that it is a problem. You know, we need to be setting up the trainers. It is a complicated sort of subject. And people, when you do training, you know, you're selling. You know, I am looking forward to Kimbo doing a session in South Shields so I can join, because I don't leave South Shields. I might go up the tyne into the way a little bit, but no, but it's all about experience. And people think, oh, I was on that course, and that's what I did. I'd done it for about 18 months ago. It was great back in 2010, 11. I was about 16 engineers a month doing the 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁 course. And I got away with it, and some of them might be listening now. And I got a phone call for one a few weeks ago and said, actually, Graeme, I can start using that qualification you delivered to me in 2010. Pre-RHI, it was just the way we're marketed. We're doing PV, it was great. And I moved out because I just wanted to get into the industry and knew the nitty-gritty. But train the trainer is critical, experience. And we can have a debate about, well, who's going to come off the tools to deliver training, because you could be training your competitors. But I know there's other things you can try and get buddy systems and all sorts of stuff talking about. But I think the other thing is we're all geared up, ready. Yes, we haven't got enough trained engineers, but engineers will go on to the training and do it if there's demand. But there's probably not enough demand from I know we've got energy price rises, but a couple of things that we've looked at before we even give a boiler manufacturer a target, you've got to get the industry set up right. So you've got to talk about planning permission and noise from heat pumps and permitted development rights and leveling that out across the country. And I think one of the I forgot what I was going to say now. One of the big things that sort of needs to be looked at is the training element, get people upskilled, getting them trained. But one of the really big things is the energy price levies. So can you take off the green levies from electric and put them on gas? Because that will naturally drive up the installations of heat pumps, because people will start looking at the gas bill and go, whoa. That would
be the biggest thing that the government could do is that.
Yeah.
And then you would see it flip. All of a sudden, it's so much cheaper to run. All of a sudden, it makes sense to do. Because like you said, people want their payback. I asked a client, she was having her bathrooms done at the same time as I was going around and doing a survey. And she talked about payback. And I was like, how long do you think it's going to take for your bathrooms to pay back? And she went, oh, well, they don't need to. So where has it come from that we need to have payback time for hot water and heating, And that needs to change. I think that needs to change.
Well, it's not. I mean, the thing is, ultimately, none of it's incentivized properly. We've got them all in the wrong places, if you know what I mean. So, gas is very well subsidized, as you well know. And look through all the issues we've had. When gas prices went to, what was it? I think it was £10 or something like that per unit. I think it worked out at. We were being. That was all coming from the government. The government was giving the energy companies this money, and gas is always really well subsidized, but the incentives behind people wanting to try and do the right thing, you've got to kick people up the arse. I mean, that's why the solar did so well. When solar PV came out, and I can't remember when it was, 2010, I think it was, when it all started kicking off. That was big money. 46 pence or whatever it was, 44 pence per kilowatt hour.
Yeah,
that was big money incentive. But the problem was, it was incentivized across the board. Instead of what should have happened, it should have been, right, you can get 44 pence per kilowatt hour up to a 4 kilowatt PV system, and then look how many households probably would have took that up. The problem was, it got incentivized across the board, so we ended up with farmers' fields full of solar PV panels, instead of actually where it should have gone, which should have been a system on every single person's house, which would have been lovely, because then we wouldn't have this big issue we've got right now, which is people can't afford their energy bills. So it's the same as heat pumps. We've got a method of actually electrifying a lot of people's homes, especially in rural areas. Why are we buggering about with all boilers and stuff like that still in rural areas? Surely it makes perfect sense to put clear incentives in place for rural areas to get those all boilers ripped out and electrified, because there's no sense in big lorries carting containers of oil up to your house and dumping all that oil in a big tank outside your house, and it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because if anything, it puts homeowners in more fuel poverty, because you've actually got to preload your fuel for the next upcoming few seasons, where at least with electricity, you pay as you go. Do you know what I mean? And you've got a choice, but with oil, you've got no choice, have you? So it's those things in place that, if we don't have the incentives, and the homeowners expect it, unfortunately, whether we want to, they have like I said, they have a bathroom or a kitchen or whatever, and there's no payback required on that, but there is on their their efficient heating system. But it's where the narrative gets driven, isn't it? Do we want to drive the narrative of the 600,000 heat pumps? Because if we do, we need to be putting much bigger incentives in place right now to achieve that, because it's not going to be achieved. If you're relying on people's money, especially as we're going into probably, I don't know, the biggest recession UK's ever going to have, I don't know, in a long, long time, over the next year or two, you know, where's the money coming from? That's kind of...
Yeah. I mean, is there any scope for those interest-free loans that Scotland have had and stuff like that? Because I think that would flip it as well, an interest-free loan for any renewable.
Yeah, they're not from government, but I know banks are talking about it now. Which bank was it offered? And I think Nationwide is actually who I've got my mortgage with, but it's gone up £200 a month. Anyway,
we have in Wales.
Well, yeah.
We have in Wales. We got that 0% scheme as well in Wales.
Right,
so, but it's council led. So it's like, you know, like our local council here, 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁. It's a 𝗵𝗲𝗁 led scheme from Welsh government. But yeah, there is money for, I think actually ROCBA, they're called locally to us, ROBC. Robert Owen, ROCB, Robert Owen Community Bank locally here, they give out loans for that to local residents. Not many people know about it. Doesn't get very well publicised.
Is it like low income stuff, that kind of?
Yeah, I mean there is. I mean there's heat pump incentive grants now on like eco-6 schemes, as Graeme said. That is rolling out through Wales as well. But you know, I've looked at a couple of the installs that pop up on Facebook. They're not looking great.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is these guys, you know, whether the best will in the world. But I don't know what's better, put a heat pump in it, it's half ropey and it gets repaired and it's got a heat. I don't know what the I don't know what the thing is really. Even if it run badly, you know, a high temperature heat pump running badly, would it still achieve 𝗁𝗏𝗄? Maybe.
Yeah, but and if the price of electricity falls, do it then encourage poor installs because it's getting cheaper, like we did with gas in the 70s. Like, oh, gas is cheap, happy days, we can just burn as much as we want. You know, we'll lower the price. So it all needs to be mixed in. You know, we need to look at, you know, not just government, you know, banks are doing, we're talking about green mortgages or green loans on top, 0% for so many years. You know, I've talked about before, are they going to link your council tax with how green your home is, so it'll be incentivizing you to have a more efficient home. There's loads of stuff that's sort of going on, but whatever thing, and even talk about the bus scheme. You know, the £5,000 and £6,000 were set by the government in, let's get right, October 2021. Now a lot's happened in the world in 18 months, and that if I was a bet man, I would say the funding will get increased, but I haven't got a clue by how much or when it'll be increased. And obviously ground source 6,000 is not enough, but the government need to sort of lead the way. But I think one thing, you know, we've said to the government directly is you're not marketing the bus scheme. Nobody knows really, you know, only in the industry. And I said to one of the civil servants, I says, you need to put an advert in the middle of Coronation Street. So people will actually know it's available. And then, you know, but it's all a balance, but there is stuff afoot. But I agree, there's lots of things that need being put in place by government and industry and banks and councils and loans before we start, you know, looking at other things, you know, like market mechanisms for manufacturers and other targets. We need to get, you know, help UK manufacturing as well and things like that. So there's loads of stuff going on, but that's my final piece.
Wow. It's been very interesting. Thank you guys all for joining. And if no one else has got anything to add, then I think we can probably sign off there. And we've put the world to rights with hybrid.
Was there any questions, Claire, at all, or?
It was only one, but I think Graeme did answer it earlier. It was from if I could make it show. It was from Stephen Bush, who asked about, will MCS allow funding for a hybrid, which I think you said earlier, not at the moment, but...
No, well, MCS is sort of linked to the schemes in it. So I know under ECO, they're looking at funding hybrid systems, and they've actually mentioned that, but we don't know how it's going to all sort of work out. We don't know how much funding percentages, so that's something to be there, but there's nothing else for hybrids at the moment I can think off the top of my head, but certainly ECO for low income properties or certain criteria can have it, but general public, if you're able to afford it, nothing at the moment. But the article the government minister said this week, which I've just been reading, that they are going to look at it, you know, providing funding towards hybrids because they see it as a key stepping stone. So I expect an announcement imminently. Famous last words.
And we'll obviously keep you all updated on legislation as it you know, as it comes out and comes into actual play, we'll get Graeme back on again and we'll do some more sessions about that sort of stuff, grants and funding and training for heat pumps and things like that. So we've got a few of those planned in the future. I don't think there was any other questions, just some comments. So thanks everyone for your time.